All right, so
Are you,
I'm filming.
do you know what you're interviewing him about?
Do we ever? Do we ever?
I don't know.
Close that shade.
You can if you want. I closed the other one, but so this is Justin Markert,
Hey.
Cellar door, which Cellar door is like many things other than just the most beautiful phrase or something there.
Right. Or a 10-year-old Donnie Darko reference.
Yeah.
Went awry.
It could be worse. You could just have rabbits everywhere. So Cellar door functions as blog,
Yeah.
culture blog.
Yeah. We started booking shows first. Well, we started the coffee shop first, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
A long, long time ago. And then we sold that, but we kept on booking shows, and so that was kind of the core thing. It was like we wanted to put out a compilation, so we started like a MIDI record label and started doing compilation releases. And then after that came the blog in like 2010 because we liked promoting music a lot and not just necessarily what we were personally doing, but what everybody was doing. And so that developed, and all that stuff kind of started picking up steam around 2010. So we got the blog and then like the label stuff, and then we work with a handful of bands and kind of do all their stuff for them.
So, culture blog, management company, record label.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What bands?
The bands that we like exclusively work with are Midnight Passenger, Ohio Sky, the Commonwealth, and So Long Albatross. But we like, we do a bunch of stuff. Like we book shows a lot at the beach and at the Grog, at a lot of festivals we do the programming for. So those are like the ones that we like do their press releases for and their like CD promotion type stuff for, and so that's like we do everything for them. But like we have a kind of wide circle of friends and bands that we always work with all the time. So
Cool. Well, what have you found management-wise? Like, what have you been finding as you've taken on some of these bands to more directly manage? What's the strategy you've been using, or things that work or don't work?
I think it's a good thing for bands to, because emailing clubs for shows or like trying to get people to review your CD isn't necessarily what an artist wants to be doing with their time. They want to be an artist. They want to write songs and perform songs. And the idea of like, well, you also have to be a businessman, works for a lot of people, but for most people, I don't think it's what they're interested in. And I actually was a musician primarily, and I found that I enjoyed, doing websites and booking shows as much as I enjoyed playing. And I think at some point realized I was better at those things than playing. So that kind of, so when you see other bands and you're like, these guys are so good, how come people don't know who they are? I think it helps if there's a third, and it helps to have a third person try to sell you, because that sucks to say, oh, look, this is how great I am, here's my CD, review my album. It's awful. So it's a lot easier for, I can't even say that about myself, but for another person to say, Josh's record's so good, it's a lot easier to swallow. Probably the person reading that email or having that conversation, and the artist doesn't have to fill themselves up with all that gross stuff.
Cool. But I guess as a, I don't know, tell us about your experience so far. Like, is when you're running this record label, is that something that you consider a success? Has it been more...
It's definitely a labor of love. The truth is that, like, the idea of any kind of music industry as a viable, like, this is going to be my living is like hitting the NFL draft. You know what I mean? So the idea of, running a successful record label, you have to adjust the levels of what success means. Obviously... we're not like record moguls, kind of a thing. But, to me, it's success in the sense of I feel like we've been able to take bands that maybe not a lot of people knew about, like the Commonwealth, for example, I think are a great band, but they're just not awesome like getting out there, and they're not awesome, you know, like at like kind of building themselves up and kind of putting like whatever promo juice we have behind ourselves to get their record out and get them like being requested for shows. You know, there are little successes. And then you have a band like Ohio Sky who is like kind of ready to go. Like they want to make this their living. They all have the type of job where they're ready to tour. They don't have families. They don't have kids. Like it's time for them. You know, we just did their album release at the House of Blues, and it went well. And now it's like, okay, so what do we do with them? So we're trying to book them in other cities and other markets and things like that. Actually, I had a huge success. We just booked them at the Metro in Chicago last night, which is like blew my mind that we pulled it off. It's like amazing. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with the venue, but it's like huge. So things like that. It's a success in the sense of at the end you go, well, look at all this music. There's all this physical music that we've been able to help bands put out, and it's in X amount of people's hands as opposed to nobody's. If that answers your question.
Well, I mean, and anyone chime in here. I'm just saying question, but take us through the process of someone like the Commonwealth. Then you said you've kind of, because I remember seeing some of the early Commonwealth shows. So like, how did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that we operate, and I'm pretty sure this is the right way to do it, and sometimes I'm not so sure, is to be honest and about like where we fit as far as like our modesty level. Like we're not out there saying, hey band, we're gonna take you and we're gonna, you know, make you famous and we're gonna put you on all these things. With a band like the Commonwealth, we looked at them, we said, you guys are great. We feel like you could be at a different place than you are as far as your people knowing about you. And so how did we meet them? They played one of our shows, or we saw them perform, and I just thought they were spectacular, and I was like, why? Why do we not know these guys? I think it was that weird show that you played. Remember we did it at the Cellar space, but then the power was out, and so we did it in some weird abandoned space.
Apartment, yeah.
And that was them playing, and from there, you know, we talked about it, and we kind of met with them, and we said, okay, well, here's the deal, which basically is like, we'll handle booking your shows, we'll handle doing all like your social media bullshit if you don't want to do it, you know, press releases, like get coverage and all that kind of stuff, and for their album, we'll put out your album. What that meant is basically they recorded theirs in their own home. It actually sounds ridiculously good, strangely enough, for being a home recording. And so we paid for the physical production of that and everything that goes into that, like, you know, advertising, promo, design. Luckily, I'm a graphic designer, so that's a big cost that we don't have to inflict on, you know, ourselves. And then basically the model is that like the release show will hopefully recoup those expenses, and then there's some sort of split from there on out. So I feel like that's the smallest part of it, because at this point anybody can go press your record. I mean, especially if you're doing CDs, anybody can just go do it through disc makers. It's not, you just have to get a little bit of money and you can do it. So that's like, I think what people see is like, oh, the biggest thing, but to me, like what we do for them is all like the minutia, the like, you know, talking to booking people all the time and listening to bands that random emails that say, hey, can we show swap and do all kinds of that stuff, so they don't have to do that. So, you know, with them we have like a running Facebook dialogue with all different bands, just constantly like, hey, what about this show? What about that show? And basically try to book them not too close together. It gets tough in the summers because there are all these free festival events that kind of cut in on, you know, other shows. So that gets weird. But so basically we just kind of do all that stuff. So I feel like we've been able to take them from playing like kind of smaller shows, and like now they're getting requested to play like bigger shows. Like they're playing shows in the ballroom. They're playing shows. We got them a show at the House of Blues. And it's just a matter of people are like, well, how did you get that show? Or Well, I've just been bugging people for 10 years to the point where like now there's a relationship with those people.
You just bug people so you have a relationship.
Yeah,
All
like
right.
when I was a youngin, when I was in my early 20s and I was playing shows myself, like I played the Odeon like 3 times in front of jam-packed rooms. And I had no business on those. I had no business playing those shows. I didn't have a fan base. I didn't have, I mean, I feel like my music was decent. The band was good, but there was no draw for that to happen. And it was just because I found the email for Dan Keemer, and it would send polite emails. Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Here are my links, and just follow up and follow up and follow up. And then one day I was like, hey, do you want to, come open for the Clarks? The show's pretty much sold out, but we just need an opening band. So yeah, so I just think it's, the persistence of keeping up with people that band members don't want to do.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
kind of got off topic, but
No, that's fun.
So, I mean, probably I don't know how much background you have or how much you guys talked, but just to give you kind of an idea of where we're coming from, we have, basically 4 bands we're working with. We're trying to, we feel that there's a lot of talent here, and obviously you know this, but the talent, if a band gets to a certain point in their career where they don't have the backup of, the management,
lots of money, yeah.
and basically all the things that go into supporting that career in Cleveland, we feel like there's some gaps, as far as what resources they have here to draw from. And so, we've taken these 4 bands, and we're kind of have been having people come down and kind of have this kind of almost like TED Talk kind of thing about where Cleveland's lacking, what can we do to kind of fill these gaps and get over these hurdles that bands face. So when a band gets to a point in their career where they are having some success, they don't just move away.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely holes. I feel like, with Cellar Door, with the blog, for the longest time, we were the only music blog. And that's crazy to me in a city like Cleveland. When we first were going in 2010, all these others that were kind of not doing much, all of a sudden started doing stuff again. It's probably because they saw somebody else doing it, we better get back on the ball, but then they all just kind of fell off. And I think it's so easy to do that. And it drives me, I don't know why there aren't 10 music blogs in Cleveland. There are a couple, Blown Speakers.
There's a couple of small ones.
Yeah, Blown Speakers popped up. I Rock Cleveland's been doing it forever. Kryptonite Music are these 2. I think they're college girls that just started doing it, and they just did something. They just showed. Well, you guys know you're involved with it. They just did a show on April 25th at the Agora. So that's cool to see them. They've done stuff on Midnight Passenger and Ohio Sky. So one, where are those outlets? And it's cool to see them popping up. I think the Vinyl District is finally starting to do stuff again, even though that's not really Cleveland blog. They kind of have regions, and there's a Cleveland region that's been more active. And the Blown Speaker guys are starting to do more. One of the guys that used to write for us, Eddie Fleischer, I think he's gonna start something. So it's cool that things are finally showing up. But even just those outlets help a band immensely. So I think it's a combination of getting more of those things happening, more cheerleaders for music out there, and then getting artists to do the work to just send a CD or send a record, which it's crazy how much that doesn't happen. It's on your press clips, people in other cities don't necessarily know that Kryptonite Music is fairly new, and they but if their website looks good and the quote's good, that will help get attention in other places. So I think luckily there have been a bunch of podcasts that have kind of popped up out of nowhere. I do one with Scene, where we interview comedians and musicians. It was with Ramon Rivas, but he's too busy. He can't be anywhere at a given time. So I'm partnerless at the moment. But there's the Loud in Cleveland guys. They started doing one, and then Scene kind of grabbed them under their little loop. So it seems like there are more outlets all of a sudden. The Bull program is doing stuff. So I think it's good. And you can see the bands that are actively seeking that stuff out or have someone seeking that stuff out for them are getting more looks. Because my biggest problem is that, like, there are incredible musicians all over Cleveland, and they're all in these little packs, and they only play to the packs and to their friends, and it drives me crazy. Which is, so when we do like Cellar Door Presents shows, like we kind of try to pull people from these different circles and kind of create a little new Venn diagram in the hopes that, like, oh, there's other stuff going on. So that's one of the main reasons we did Rendezvous is, like, we'd be like, this band's fans this band sounds a lot like this band, but they're totally in completely different worlds. They're just in their own silos. Like, what if we put them on the same show together? And then all of a sudden you're not playing to the same 25 people at the Happy Dog that you play to all the time. So I think it's, I think there needs to be more outlets. I don't know the bands, like, I'd be interested in knowing the percentages of bands that are really like, I'm going to make this my career or not. And I don't know if the atmosphere and environment of Cleveland dictates that you go, well, no, I'm just going to play on the weekends every once in a while. Like, I wonder how much the involvement or lack thereof of a Cleveland music scene, dictates, like, the optimism of someone making it as a musician. So, I don't know.
Well, you've done these rendezvous and you've done these events that are, I mean, the crowd comes out maybe because of the different bands, but it's also like you're building this brand as a cellar door kind of thing. That's
the hope and the plan is that, like, if we do like enough shows that are quality, that, like, hopefully at some point you just see Cellar Door Presents and go, oh, I don't know who 3 of these bands are, but let's go to this show because they've done a good job of doing it. And I think crowds are important too. And I get that, like, all this is, like, laughs in the face of, like, artistic integrity. But, like, these things matter. Seeing a band in a jam-packed, like, Beachland Tavern creates way more excitement for that band than seeing that same band playing that same music in front of, like, 10 people. So we kind of, I feel like we have, like, a X amount of juice that we can use up throughout the year. So we kind of use that. And, we like to pull, like, a band that we don't think anybody knows about at all, but we love and stick right in the middle of some bigger bands and give them the crowd. So I think having, I lost my train of thought, but having a crowd, I think, helps. And so, so creating some sort of Cellar Door brand, the idea is that we can, the talking point that I always say is that, like, if you go down to West 6th, you go into one of these bars where they're paying some cover band $1,200 to play these songs, and you ask somebody random at the bar to see their phone, and you go through their iTunes, chances are pretty good there's going to be some decent stuff in there. Like, most people, regardless of, like, how we want to categorize them, the stereotypes, if you want to call them whatever you want to call them, there's good taste in there, whether it be, like, they really like everybody likes Breaking Bad, right? Like, well, why? And, like, everybody likes, give or take, like, Led Zeppelin for some reason. They're the bands that, like, everybody likes. And I feel like those people in those bars, like the club crowd, it's not that they don't like good music. It's that no one's putting it in front of their face. And so, like, kind of my mantra has always been, like, I want to turn those heads to what's going on, at local music shows. Herzog played Bright Winter 2 years ago. This guy is, like, my golden guy. Herzog played Bright Winter Fest 2 years ago, and I was there with a friend. Me and Ellie were there with a friend and the friend's sister and the sister's boyfriend, who was, like, this just med school total bro, like, all out, just broed head to toe. And, like, we were standing there, and he loved every second of what was happening on stage. He loved Herzog. They were blowing him away. He couldn't believe they were from Cleveland. This was the greatest thing he'd ever seen. Like, the girlfriend and the sister went off, and he's like, well, I'm going to stay here and watch the band with these guys. And
I had a similar sentiment when I saw them.
Yeah, he couldn't believe it. And then we were walking along the back, and, like, Dan and Brian were, like, loading their van. And I was like, oh, hey guys, what's up? Because they're just guys. And he was like, you know them? And I was like, yeah, like he photographed my wedding, you know? And then he's like, well, so I introduced him and he's like, can I get a picture? And he was like so excited to get a picture with this band Herzog. And like to me, like he has been the person that's always in my mind of like everybody at the Happy Dog and the Beachland, like we've all seen every band 1,000 times. We're all like, yeah, they're good, but we get kind of jaded. So the idea of like you take a guy out of that scenario and put him someplace where there's like great music going on, all of a sudden he's like super jacked about it. And so like I have hope that like he represents at least a significant percentage of all the people that are out at the clubs and whatnot. And our kind of goal is like how do we turn those heads to what's going on? Because you know, that's like these younger bands. Like when Modern Electric was first kind of doing their thing, they had all these young fans. They were all excited. It was time to come to a concert. And so that we put them on rendezvous with like bands that had been playing for a while. And like all of a sudden, like this was their new favorite band because it was the first time they had seen them. And so our kind of whole goal is how can we like market to those people that are outside of the normal circle.
I mean, just to comment on that, like it seems like, especially with so many venues, and there's like a small portion of people that are actively pursuing independent music to go out to see these shows and stuff like that. And then you have, we're talking about like you have 4 really good shows on a Saturday night, and like there's this small group of people that would go to those shows and support them. And then you're talking about like outside of that realm, how do you get those people involved in actively pursuing independent music in Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, Saturday is jam-packed, Friday's jam-packed. That's the other thing is, well, there's nothing good going on in Cleveland. I feel like sometimes there's too much going on, and it's not necessarily healthy. But, like, those shows are going to do fine this weekend, we try to get involved, like, we sponsored a film at the Film Fest, so we got to go talk to those people at the documentary about Elliott Smith. Hopefully, they obviously like good music, so we talked to them about Cellar, and hopefully they go to the website. So we kind of try to get outside of, I booked all the non-headlining bands for the Rib Cook-Off this year. The Rib Cook-Off sounds like a lame thing.
No, it's a big.
It is.
Huge event.
And what it is the people that are going to be there
are bros.
have never seen, in a sense, or have never necessarily like last year it was all like party bands and like cover bands and we were able to kind of step in and book mostly all original bands, and so it'll be an interesting test to see whether all those people are going to react the same way, and I have a feeling they will. I have a feeling they will more so when they go, oh, this band's from Cleveland, oh, these guys wrote their own songs, so we're kind of trying to permeate other stuff to get other people, and hopefully that will draw some sort of percentage to these individual shows.
Is it going to be like the Cellar Door stage?
No, we actually we talked about that. Live Nation did it, so I don't know if I'm sure you know Barry Gable, but he called me about it, and I said, well, he said, do you want it to be like the Cellar Door once? I was like, let's not, let me just do this as like an employee of yours, because I don't want to oversaturate the Cellar Door brand, and I don't want bands to necessarily be associated too much with that. Like, I want some bands that kind of, obviously there are go-to bands that, like, I hit up all the time because, one, they're, like, professional and they do shit, like, when they're supposed to do it, and secondly, because they're good. So, like, there's, you have the people call all the time, but I don't want it to be, like, Cellar Doors, like, oh, well, that's everything you see. Like, Bright Winter, for example, I came on this year as program director because Tom quit.
Tom didn't quit.
Well, he did. We can turn the camera off and I can tell you exactly what happened.
Okay.
But there's significant.
Russell needs another energy drink.
Here's what happened.
Well, we shouldn't.
I don't mind. Tom was booking Bright Winter Fest.
Well, we know, but we shouldn't. It's okay. We shouldn't put that up on the website.